Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Carson. Coming up for you, the industry debate over media ownership rules continues. We're going to bring you the latest developments. Plus, Nine's research director, Steve Weaver, telling us about a new way to measure ratings. Our co-host, James Manning, editor and publisher of Mediaweek, here for all that and more throughout this half hour. James, well, welcome to you as always.
Hi,
Let's start off wherever else but the radio ratings. What are you seeing this week?
Yep, Survey 4, we're halfway through the ratings year. Not particularly significant, but it's if you like to draw a line in the sand, because nobody ever wants to look at one ratings in isolation with radio. It's you're really looking for the trends and all that.
Tell me about it. That's economic data 101, isn't it? Don't
exactly.
put too much store onto this one.
Yeah, as tempting as it may be.
Okay, but then
Start in Sydney.
Is this like the housing market in Sydney, so they say the rest of the nation tends to follow, or you would say don't take anything from these numbers? Again.
Yeah, no, it's important. Although Sydney and Melbourne battle for the biggest market, they're both equally important. And if you've got a network, you really need to have that network offering firing in those cities.
Very quick switch over. Because that lead looked unassailable for 2GB, by the way, and it's much the same way as this one here.
Yeah, look, the new look Macquarie radio network still leading in both Sydney and Melbourne, 3AW, Melbourne, 2GB in Sydney. Triple M, you would have noticed on the Sydney chart and the Melbourne chart, look, continues to have great surveys. We had someone in from Triple M a couple of surveys ago, and telling us the story, and they're just doing really well. So their message is getting out. Also good for Southern Cross. You'll see Fox there on the Melbourne. Their hit network stations are starting to find some life again. They all went up. So Southern Cross owns 10 licences around Australia. They all went into positive territory this survey, which is good news for them.
I detect you're spending too long on Melbourne at the expense of Sydney. We go to Brisbane. All right, just to keep this, even out the scales. Here we go. Yep.
Yeah, look, it's Australian Radio Network at the top there and Nova. They really dominate that market between them. You see their shares 13 and 14, well ahead of the other players. Triple M, look, that story continues in Brisbane, does very well for them. And an AM music station at number 4, which is a little bit unusual there. Hit Southern Cross scraping into the top 5 there. So, you know, good story for all those players there. No Fairfax radio station in that top 5. So they still got a bit of work to do in
Adelaide, meanwhile, I was just wondering, is this...
It's not Fairfax Radio, it's Macquarie Radio now.
All right,
sorry.
Freudian slip. Is there a case in this market to argue that... I mean, I'm just trying to get a flavour for which is the more settled of all these markets, all these regional markets. Which one shows the least kind of volatility?
Probably Adelaide. I mean, if you know, the 2GB and 3AW both been, I don't know, 80, 100 surveys on top. So then they're unassailable. Okay. Mixes and 97, those 2 FM stations. FM leads in the smaller cap cities because it's ABC's tends to dominate the news talk position in those cities. So we're just looking at commercial stations today. Mix in Perth, Nova in Perth, both do very well. 96 FM, just been recently sold to the Australian Radio Network, so it's holding third spot there. The hit station creeping into the top 5.
Alan Moss once said, everything is on the record. So I can kind of reveal, we were saying before we came on air, this little next observation is not spin. This is a bona fide good story on ad revenues. They are actually punching above their weight right here, right now. By dint of what? Because we get a lot of other signals that say business confidence is on the mat. It's too soon to kind of get ahead of yourself. Hold fire. Why are these numbers running ahead of everything else?
Radio revenues, you mean?
The revenues.
Yeah. Look, they're doing. So they've got a good little story. They haven't really been wiped out by the digital disruption, if you like. You know that's had a bit of impact with streaming music and all that sort of stuff. But the people still go to their breakfast radio in particular. During the morning commute, it's you know, a very attractive way to find out what's going on, get entertainment. So it just hasn't been disrupted like some of the other sectors, and they're just holding on very well. They're investing in great content. You know, they pay big salaries to people who get it right, whether it be Colin, Jackie O, Hamish and Andy, and it's working for them.
Are you hearing anything incidentally any lead signalling about an early election kind of advertising spend? Optimism around that, because word tends to get around. This is the chatter. There's an option on the table there. That would be great for this industry.
Yeah.
Kind of just capitalise on that momentum.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they spend. I don't think radio's a big gets a big bonus from.
I'm taking you off topic anyway. I'm being told stop digressing. No, the best way to measure TV audiences has been in focus this year. Viewers inevitably are moving to other platforms with that plethora of choice upon them. Advertisers scrambling to calculate the best way to invest part of the $10 billion plus annual ad spend in the sector. Well, the Nine Networks listens to the calls from its clients for more data on just how their content is being viewed across multiple platforms. It's developed a system it calls PARC, which is an acronym for Platform Agnostic Ratings for Content. They're going to use that to measure content consumption until the rating supplier OzTam comes out with its multi-platform metric. Let's get more with Nine's Research Director, Steve Weaver. Steve, welcome into the show.
Thank you very much.
Tell us how this came about. Simply put, how long have you been working on it? Why are you convinced it is, if anything, such an important thing to be releasing right here, right now?
Well, it's a step in the right direction. As you said in your introduction, OzTam is the official currency, and we are absolutely 100% supportive of what they're producing. They've got to wrangle 5 television stations and pay TV operator Foxtel. We're just one. But we do have to respond to our clients' understanding of how content is being consumed now over more and more devices and platforms. So PARC is a response to that.
Because I guess you didn't want to wait, did you? You thought, look, we think we could do our own stuff, get it out now. Tell us what sort of stuff you're measuring apart from just television viewing.
The PARC report is effectively television viewing, the traditional TV ratings that we all know and trade on, but it also includes catch-up television, so playback and record and playback. It's also any ratings that are generated through encore screenings. So a lot of the networks now are obviously, and have been for some time, playing encore screenings, and they bring a whole unique, unduplicated
And you're still talking
reach.
free-to-air there, so like when
Still
The Voice is
free-to-air.
shown again on the weekend, stuff like that? Okay.
But more importantly, it also now includes any viewing of that long-form content that's on the catch-up apps and websites for Nine's
Nine
example.
Jump in your case?
That's right.
Okay.
So you add all those numbers together using a specific methodology, and that's what the number represents.
And this is only ever used by one part of the demographic in any given house, or how are those devices actually being shared potentially amongst different viewers under the same roof? Do you get a sense as to that? How nuanced can you get that?
No, and it's important to recognise that, especially when we're talking about volume of viewing from web and apps, we're only talking about device volumes. We're not talking about people. That's what OzTam is working really hard behind the scenes to generate. But this number is simply reflective of the volume of people or the volume of devices that have streamed a particular long-form piece of content. So the traditional way in that digital space has just been to quote, stream, start. But what we've done with PARC is to then look at the volumes of streaming volumes across the whole array of the length of the stream, and then to average that number together in a similar way to how a TV rating is calculated.
Because what you'll be doing is meshing an audience estimation, which is what OzTam is, and we assume, okay, pretty accurate.
A very accurate, robust estimation.
With real data, isn't it? Because you
very well.
really know how many people are streaming, don't you?
Yeah.
Statistically, is that any challenge?
Well, I mean, the 5 free-to-air broadcasters and pay TV all have their own back-end systems for streaming content. So OzTam has to ensure that it has a metric for calculating all of those back-end systems, and they're very close to being in a position where that service will be ready soon. So ours is just one part of that, and we're just simply looking at the data coming off those servers.
Is there a kind of a duration that someone is judged to have viewed? You talked long form, by which you mean, incidentally, how long? What's the definition of long form when it's streaming on a device?
I guess it's an industry term for the traditional television broadcast content, as opposed to, say, a 1 or a 2 minute clip that you might otherwise refer to in the industry as short form.
But if that viewer was to not even have advanced through the first 2 minutes of that long-form clip, they would still be categorised as having viewed it.
Yes, but we're capturing the volumes at every single minute across the length of that particular stream and averaging those numbers together.
Okay.
So, in effect, generating an average volume for that particular stream.
Okay.
And do you need to retool your sales force? Because at the moment, if you buy catch-up, it's a separate negotiation. If you buy jump-in, it's probably a separate negotiation. You buy the free-to-airs, you mightn't get all the encore screenings. So,
yes, it's important to recognise that Park has simply been created for two things. One is to demonstrate to our clients that the audiences are still consuming the content. There's a lot of focus on live linear television results. But more importantly and secondly, the sales force then is selling premium integrated opportunities. So for big, shiny floor content like The Voice, The Block and other really big blockbuster formats that Nine has, this is what Park's used for. It's to give an overall number of consumption for that content.
do you think the figures that you're finding will be similar for what 7 and 10 might find when they do it? Or are you catering for your sort of non-traditional audiences differently?
No, I think it's all going to be fairly similar. I think the volumes of people that are moving to record and playback, the volumes of people that are watching in encores, the volume of people who are choosing to watch via apps and websites, they're all fairly similar across the networks.
And I guess too, Carson, is this going to give them more revenue? I mean, is this data that advertisers are going to think, oh, well, maybe we were missing this, and you can bill them a few more dollars or sell some more sponsorships?
Yeah, in the short term, it's used as a guide to encourage advertisers that we do have the content that covers things across platforms.
What's kind of your kind of you roll out on this and then your assessment? When are you going to go back and kind of make an analysis as to whether we've given it this now long enough to stick, to win over hearts and minds? Are we talking about a 6-month proposition to test the market reaction? What will be the success for you in terms of that time horizon?
The success for us ultimately is to evolve through to the OzTAM metric. So the Park report itself, and I must stress it's just a report, it's not a system, it's just simply a report of collating figures across platforms. OzTAM will provide a long-form streaming number that will then simply plug into the report that we've already created for ourselves. So in essence, our own internal reporting just simply moves from our own server metrics to the official currency metric that OzTAM will release sometime in the future.
What's the next project? I know that's a question, but I know because you're all thinking ahead, right? I mean,
how far away is the OzTAM, do you think? Will you be, relying on Park for a little while? Or
OzTAM is in a very, very good, solid, advanced position. They're at an auditing stage. They've got independent third-party auditors in now to stress test the system that they've built.
Come on.
I can't really tell. But let's just say we're at the latter end of the process.
And just quickly, too, maybe the State of Origin last night. Where does that fit into this business model? I mean, would that be affected by Park, or does live viewing less?
Massive numbers, 2.2 million again. Live television's certainly not going anywhere, but live sport is not something that's ever going to be watched in great numbers.
Not really
on
catch-up audience for it. No.
Yes, as Michael Wolff says, television is the new television. Thank you very much. We will see you again, Steve Weaver. Thank you. Appreciate it. Director of Nine's Research Division there, Steve Weaver. We will take a very short break. Coming up, though, on the show, all the latest media news. We've got that Q&A controversy, Odie continuing. Prime Minister's banned ministers from that programme, plus the latest on media ownership. That debate hasn't gone away, even though we thought the Prime Minister had won the day on it. 7 West Media's hit out at the campaign by those regional players. Stay with us.